Hello again, everybody. In this video, we're going to take a brief look at race and ethnicity. So the definitions of those two terms. So the first thing to understand about race and ethnicity is that both of these terms, both of these classifications are socially constructed. So what does socially constructed mean? Well, socially constructed means that it's not really real. It is a manifestation that is created by people. We create it by our understandings and our definitions about what is and what is not. So there is no foundation in physics. There's no foundation in biology. There's no foundation in anything tangible when we're talking about something that's socially constructed. So we've looked at a lot of social constructions throughout the term so far, and we'll continue to do so as we look at other content. And one of the things that normally surprises people is to learn that race is a socially constructed thing. What that means is that there is no biological reason to classify people according to their skin tone, as we do when we categorize people according to race. We socially construct race when we take some biological component, we elevate it to a place of importance, and then we categorize people according to that. Now, normally, race is socially constructed using skin color. And a person's skin color is going to be determined by the amount of melanin that they have in their skin. And melanin is a product that your body creates to protect you from the sun. So if your ancestors lived in a place where the sunlight was especially intense, they would have needed more melanin in their skin to protect them from that. And if your ancestors lived in a place where the sun was less intense, they would have needed less to protect them. And this is where the difference in skin tones comes from. So when we take race as a socially constructed category, we're saying that this one biological difference among thousands or millions that can exist between human beings, this one we're going to say is important. And then we're going to organize people according to that one. It would be no different than socially constructing races based on eye color. So if you have brown eyes, that's one race. And if you have green eyes, that's another race. And if you have blue eyes, that's another race. And we could organize people like that. And that wouldn't be any more or less accurate than how we currently do it with skin color. You could socially construct race using the size of a person's foot, using their height, using their hair color. And neither one of these things would be any more or less accurate than how we currently do it. So it should be understood that there's no place on the earth where you can go and you can find a group of people that is biologically pure, meaning that they have only and all of the characteristics of one another. In fact, when you look at the currently racially constructed categories, so if you look at white people, if you look at Asians, if you look at black people, if you look at people of Latin descent, there is, in fact, more differences within each group than there are between different groups. What that means is if you randomly selected two white people and you randomly selected two black people, those two white people would have less in common with each other, and those two black people would have less in common with each other than if you took one of those randomly selected white people and one of those randomly selected black people. Those two, one white, one black, would be the ones who were more biologically similar than the ones with the respective skin tones. We know this because we now have the ability to look at people's DNA. It's often something that strikes people as surprising. It runs contradictory to things that we've been taught to understand about race, but it is wholly correct and true. Again, there is more difference between people in a currently constructed category. There's more difference between all people of Asian descent, and there is more difference between all people of Hispanic descent than if we had one person of Asian descent and one person of Hispanic descent. Those two people would be the ones that would be more biologically similar. It might not look the same to us based on what we see of these external features, but again, there's a lot more to a human being than what their skin looks like or the shape of their eyes or the type of their hair, right? There's millions, tens of millions of things about us that can be different. And we socially construct race just picking one of these things that people have decided is important. Nature didn't decide this was important. People decided it was important. Again, socially constructed. Okay, so that's looking at race as a social construction. The other term that we talk about is ethnicity. Now, ethnicity is similarly socially constructed, right? But instead of using a biological trait, with ethnicity, we use a cultural trait. So if you think back to our culture chapter, we had tangible and intangible types of culture, what religion that you practice, the kind of food that you make and eat, the kind of music, right? All these different cultural traits. Well, when we socially construct ethnicity, we take cultural traits and use that to define a category, and that's ethnicity. So these things are similar, but they are most definitely not the same thing. Race and ethnicity are most definitely not the same thing, because you could have a person of a race that's normally associated with a particular kind of culture, but they don't have to be. Right? So if you are a white person and you are born in Japan, you're adopted by Japanese parents, you might have the race of white, but then have ethnicity of Japanese, right? So these things are different, although both are social constructions, okay? So remember the key takeaways. Both of these things are social constructions. Race is socially constructed from some biological trait that we artificially give importance to, and ethnicity is socially constructed from cultural traits. Okay, and these are not the same, but they are similar in some ways. Okay, if you have any questions or comments, I'd appreciate your feedback. You can leave it below, and I'll see you in the next video.